Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going on a journey to explore Lanikia. And they're not just building an app, they're aiming for like a whole digital ecosystem. Think everything from social media, ride sharing to finance, education, all interconnected and powered by AI and blockchain. We're diving into their business plan, projected growth, and the team behind this ambitious project. So buckle up and get ready to explore the Lanikia universe. Is this the next digital giant? Or is it reaching for the stars a little too soon? Let's find out.
I think what's immediately striking about Lanikia is the sheer scope of their vision. They're not content with just carving out a niche. They're going for a full-blown digital landscape. It's like they looked at the internet and said, we're going to build our own version, but better.
Okay, so we're not talking about a single app here. We're talking about a whole constellation of them, right?
Exactly. And they've even branded them with space-themed names to emphasize this idea of a vast, interconnected digital universe. Shooting Stars for their ride-sharing platform, APOC Education for online learning, Hubble for managing your finances within the Lanikia world. It's all very grand and ambitious.
That certainly sounds like it.
Sure.
But grand ambitions need a solid foundation. How does Lanikia actually plan to make money?
Well, they have a multi-layered approach,
Yeah.
which is interesting because it shows they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. First, there's the classic subscription model. Users pay a small monthly fee for access to the platform and its basic features.
Kind of like a gym membership for the digital world.
That's a good analogy. Then there's a commission on transactions within the Lanikia ecosystem. So every time you book a ride on Shooting Stars or pay for a course on Epoch Education, Lanikia takes a small cut.
Makes sense. That's a pretty standard approach for platform businesses. But I'm also seeing a lot of buzz about blockchain and tokenized likes in their materials. What's the deal with that?
That's where things get particularly interesting and potentially controversial. Lanikia is pushing this idea of empowering users, especially creators, by directly rewarding their engagement. They're saying, hey, you're the ones generating all this valuable content, so you deserve a bigger piece of the pie.
So instead of just getting likes and views, creators could potentially earn actual income from their content. How would that even work?
They're proposing a system where those likes and views are essentially turned into digital tokens on a blockchain. The idea is that these tokens could then be used within the Lanikia ecosystem to purchase services, access premium content, or even potentially be exchanged for other cryptocurrencies or traditional currencies.
Okay, so imagine I post a hilarious video that goes viral on Lanikia's social media platform. Those millions of views get converted into Lanikia tokens, which I can then use to, say, buy a ride on Shooting Stars.
No.
Or book a vacation rental on their Earth hosting platform.
Exactly. It's like they're creating their own internal economy where engagement is the currency.
It's a bold vision. But there are a lot of unanswered questions. How do they ensure the value of these tokens remains stable? What happens if the platform doesn't take off? There are a lot of potential pitfalls here.
You're absolutely right. And that's something we'll be exploring in more depth later in this deep dive. The technical feasibility, the regulatory hurdles, the potential for market manipulation. These are all critical factors to consider. But for now, let's put those concerns aside and focus on understanding the mechanics of this system.
Sounds good. Let's keep unpacking this Lanikia universe. One thing that keeps popping up is their emphasis on AI. They call their AI system LIA, right?
Yes. LIA, short for Lanikia AI, they're positioning it as the brains of the operation, the engine that drives personalization, content curation, and even creative possibilities within the platform. They're making some pretty bold claims about its capabilities.
Like what? Give me an example. What can this LIA actually do?
Well, one example they highlight is the ability to use voice commands to access features and navigate the platform. So instead of tapping and scrolling, you could just tell LIA what you want.
Okay. That's pretty standard for AI assistants these days. Anything more unique?
They're also claiming LIA can personalize content recommendations in a way that goes beyond just suggesting things you might like based on your past behavior. They say it can actually anticipate your needs and
Even a
interests,
touch of
surfacing
philosophical
content
insight.
you didn't even know you were looking for.
It seems like they've assembled
That's a pretty
team
high bar for an AI.
with a pretty solid
How are they
foundation
actually
to build
achieving
on.
that level of
Personalization,
What's
let's be
the
honest.
tech behind
A
LAA?
great team
That's
and
a
a
great
bold
question.
vision aren't enough.
And to be honest,
We need to know if
the
Lanikia
source
has
material
any
we
real
have doesn't go
traction.
into a lot of
Are
technical
there any
detail.
signs
They
that
mention advanced
supercluster is
algorithms and
actually
machine
forming?
learning.
They do
But they
emphasize
don't
a
specify the
conservative
particular
financial
technologies
approach.
or
They're
methodologies
focusing on
It sounds like we're
optimizing
going to have to
their
dig a little
existing
deeper
applications
to understand the
and building
how
a solid
behind
user
these
base
claims.
before expanding too rapidly. They're not just throwing money at the problem.
It's good to hear they're not burning through cash just to chase growth, but I'm also seeing some pretty ambitious projections for their future growth. How high are they aiming?
Well, they're projecting a total addressable market, TAM, of 1 quadrillion USD. And according to their growth horizon graph, their goal is to capture all immediate value in emerging businesses by 2028.
Hold on, did you say 1 quadrillion? That's a lot of zeros. And capturing all immediate value in emerging businesses by 2028. Those are some incredibly bold claims.
You're not wrong. And this is where things start to get a little more complex. Because while their early user numbers are promising and their financial approach seems sound, these projections are raising some eyebrows, even among industry experts.
Yeah, $1 quadrillion and dominating emerging businesses within a few years. That's more than ambition. That's almost science fiction. What evidence do they have to support these projections? What underlying assumptions are they making?
That's exactly the kind of critical thinking we need to apply here, and that's what we'll be doing in the next part of our deep dive into Laniakea. We're going to dissect those projections, analyze their market positioning, and try to understand whether these are achievable goals or just pie-in-the-sky aspirations.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
We're going from the what of Laniakea to the how and the why. We're diving deeper into the feasibility of their vision and whether they can truly deliver on their promises.
It's going to be a fascinating exploration, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts as we continue this deep dive.
Me too. Stay with us as we continue our journey through the Laniakea universe. Welcome back to our deep dive into Laniakea. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of their financials and growth projections, let's zoom out for a second and talk about the broader implications of their digital ecosystem approach. It's a concept we're hearing more and more these days, but what does it actually mean in practice?
That's a great question, because it's easy to get caught up in the buzzwords without really understanding the underlying dynamics at play. When we talk about a digital ecosystem, we're essentially talking about a self-contained environment where various products and services are interconnected and work seamlessly together. Think of it like a walled garden. But instead of flowers and trees, you have social media platforms, financial tools, educational resources, and even entertainment options.
So it's like creating a mini internet within the internet,
Yeah.
with Laniakea as the gatekeeper.
Exactly. And that raises a number of important questions. For example, how does this approach impact competition? If users are primarily interacting within the Laniakea ecosystem, are they less likely to use competing platforms? Does this create an unfair advantage for Laniakea's own apps and services?
It also makes you wonder about data privacy and control. If all your online activity is happening within this Laniakea universe, they're essentially collecting a massive amount of data about you, your preferences, your habits, your entire digital footprint. What are they doing with that data? How are they protecting it?
Those are all valid concerns, and it's something that users need to be aware of when considering whether to fully embrace this kind of ecosystem approach. There's a trade-off between convenience and control. On the one hand, having everything integrated and interconnected can be very appealing. On the other hand, you're placing a lot of trust in a single company to manage and protect your data.
Right. It's like choosing between a bustling city with all its amenities and a secluded cabin in the woods. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. It depends on your priorities and comfort level. But let's go back to the specific mechanics of Laniakea for a moment. They're making some pretty bold claims about empowering creators through the tokenization of likes and views. Can we unpack that concept a bit further? Because I'm still not entirely sure how that would work in practice.
Sure. Let's break it down step by step. Imagine you're a musician and you upload a new song to Laniakea's music streaming platform. Every time someone listens to your song, you earn Laniakea tokens. The more listens you get, the more tokens you accumulate.
Okay, so far so good. But what can I actually do with those tokens? Are they like digital coupons I can redeem for discounts on other Laniakea services?
It's a bit more than that. They envision these tokens as having real value within their ecosystem. You could use them to purchase premium features, promote your content to a wider audience, or even potentially cash them out for traditional currency, although the specifics of how that would work are still unclear.
But if these tokens are meant to have real-world value, wouldn't their price fluctuate like any other cryptocurrency? Wouldn't that create a lot of uncertainty and volatility for creators trying to earn a living from the system?
That's a key challenge they'll need to address. They've hinted at mechanisms to stabilize the value of their tokens, perhaps through some kind of reserve system or algorithmic adjustments. But again, the details are scarce. And even with those mechanisms in place, it's difficult to predict how the market will react to these tokens. Will they be seen as a legitimate form of currency or just another speculative asset prone to booms and busts.
It's a gamble for sure. And that brings us back to those eye-popping financial projections.
Yeah.
A quadrillion-dollar TAM by 2028, capturing all immediate value in emerging businesses. How do they justify those numbers?
Yeah. Well, their argument is based on the idea that they're not just creating another platform, but rather a fundamental shift in how we interact and transact online. They're betting that this ecosystem approach will be so appealing, so convenient, so empowering, that it will draw in massive numbers of users and generate unprecedented economic activity.
But isn't that assuming a level of adoption
Yeah.
that's never been seen before? Even the biggest tech giants, the Facebooks and Googles of the world, has struggled to achieve that kind of universal reach.
You're absolutely right. And that's why many analysts are skeptical of these projections. They argue that Lanikia is underestimating the power of existing platforms, the complexity of the regulatory landscape, and the inherent challenges of building and scaling a truly global digital ecosystem.
Starting to feel like they're building this massive skyscraper.
Yeah.
Without a solid foundation, the ambition is there, the vision is compelling. But are they getting ahead of themselves?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to answer it, we need to look beyond the hype and start digging into the specifics of their plan. Let's take a closer look at their revenue projections and see if we can identify any red flags or potential areas of concern.
Okay, let's do it. Time to crunch some numbers and see if Lanikia's financial projections add up. All right, let's dive into the numbers and see what's fueling Lanikia's projected growth. They've laid out their revenue streams, and it's interesting to see where they're expecting the big wins to come from.
Right, and it's not necessarily where you might expect. They're not solely relying on their more attention-grabbing concepts like the tokenized reward system or their AI, OLE.
Right, so where are they expecting the bulk of their revenue to come from?
Surprisingly, their projections show that. Their bread and butter will likely be more traditional services. They're projecting that Shooting Stars, their ride-sharing platform, will bring in a solid 12.5% of their total revenue.
It's a decent chunk. But considering the competitive landscape of the ride-sharing market, I'm a bit surprised it's not higher.
I agree. It suggests they're being realistic about the challenges of breaking into that space. But what's even more interesting is that their biggest revenue generator is projected to be Earth hosting. Their version of Airbnb or VRBO, they're expecting it to contribute 16.6% of their total revenue.
So they're betting big on travel. That makes sense, especially with the growing trend of experiential travel and the desire for unique accommodations.
It seems like they're tapping into that desire for authenticity and personalization. They're highlighting features like AI-powered recommendations tailored to your specific travel preferences and blockchain-secured transactions for added peace of mind.
It's a smart move. People are increasingly looking for more than just a place to sleep when they travel. They want an experience, a story, a connection. If Laniakea can deliver that through Earth hosting, they could carve out a significant niche in the travel market.
And alongside Earth hosting, they're projecting Hubble Pay, their financial hub, to bring in another 16.6% of their revenue.
So travel and finance are the twin pillars of their revenue strategy. It's an interesting combination. But what about those other applications they keep mentioning? The education platform, the event ticketing system, the professional services marketplace. What role do they play in their financial projections?
You're definitely not neglecting those areas. They're projecting that Epoch Education will contribute 8.33%, Eclipse Events another 8.33%, and Land Services 12.5%. Which it seems they're aiming for a diversified revenue stream, spreading their bets across multiple sectors.
That's a smart approach. It reduces their reliance on any single market and gives them more flexibility to adapt to changing trends. But it also raises a question about their core technology. If they're projecting that AI will only contribute 1% of their revenue, does that mean it's not essential to their strategy, how they've been suggesting?
It's a valid point. They've talked a lot about LIA being the brains of the operation, but their financial projections seem to tell a different story. It makes you wonder if they're overselling the role of AI in their ecosystem.
Or maybe they're playing the long game. Perhaps they see AI as a long-term investment. That will eventually drive revenue through increased efficiency, personalization, and innovation.
That's certainly possible. It's worth noting that their approach to AI integration is quite deliberate. They're planning a phased rollout, starting with basic features like personalized recommendations and gradually introducing more advanced capabilities as the technology matures and user adoption grows.
It's a cautious approach,
Yeah.
which might be wise, considering the potential complexities and ethical considerations surrounding AI. They seem to be prioritizing user trust and understanding over rushing to implement the latest and greatest AI features.
That's a key takeaway here. Lenny Kaye is walking a tightrope between innovation and caution. They're pushing the boundaries with their concept of a digital ecosystem, but they're also being mindful of the potential risks and challenges.
It's a balancing act that will ultimately determine their success or failure.
So what's the verdict? Are they a future tech giant in the making, or are they just a shooting star destined to burn out? It's too early to say for sure. Their vision is bold, their early metrics are promising, and their team seems capable. But there are also many unanswered questions and potential pitfalls along the way. The feasibility of their tokenized reward system, the regulatory hurdles they'll face, the competition from established players. These are all factors that could make or break their ambitions.
Ultimately, their success will depend on their ability to execute, to adapt, and to convince users that their vision of a digital ecosystem is worth embracing. It's a story that's still being written, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it unfolds.
I couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that the future of technology isn't predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make, the innovations we embrace, and the questions we continue to ask.
And that's what we do here on The Deep Dive. We explore, we analyze, we question, and we empower you, our listeners, to make informed decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is a pretty bold concept, that's for sure. Instead of just focusing on one aspect of our, digital lives, Lady Kaye wants to be that one-stop shop for everything. So they're trying to integrate a whole bunch of different applications into this so-called supercluster. And they're covering things like ride sharing with their Shooting Stars app.
Yeah.
Education with Epoch Education. They even have financial management with something called Hubble. It really does seem like they're aiming to become this complete digital ecosystem, rather than just another platform.
So it's less about creating individual apps and more about weaving them all together into a seamless experience.
Exactly. It seems like they're banking on the idea that users are tired of juggling all these different apps that we all have.
Right.
And that people are just looking for something that's more integrated, more well simplified, Whether they can pull it off, though, that's a whole nother question. The technical challenges of actually creating a truly seamless experience across such a wide range of applications they're pretty massive, even, with blockchain and AI in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. And speaking of those apps, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, they've got Shooting Stars for the ride sharing, Epoch Education for learning, Eclipse Events, that's for booking and attending events. Then they have Land Services, which is for finding professionals, I guess. Earth Lodging for accommodations, and then Hubble for finances, LK Music and LK Film, that's for entertainment, and Whisper, which is their chat app. So it's quite a lineup. Is there anything in that suite of apps that really just jumps out at you as being particularly unique or potentially impactful?
Well, a few things stand out to me. First, you've got Eclipse Events. It's not just about finding events. They're proposing tokenized events, which means that attendance or participation could potentially, earn users some form of cryptocurrency, which is a pretty novel concept. It could actually change how we think about attending and engaging with different events.
Yeah.
Then you've got Whisper, their chat application. And that's supposed to be powered by some seriously advanced AI. I mean, they're talking about using models like Bard and DaVinci, allowing for features that we haven't really seen in any other chat apps, like real-time translation, highly personalized content filtering, and even predictive text that goes, way beyond what we have now.
Wow.
And then, of course, almost all of these apps seem to be integrated with LAA, which is their voice-activated AI.
Right. Speaking of LAA, I mean, the way they describe it, it's almost like it's the heart and the brain of the whole Laniakea system.
Right.
They're claiming that this thing can handle a mind-boggling amount of tasks, from booking a ride to finding you the perfect tutor. It's like they're trying to build a digital version of a personal assistant that's available 24/7. So does that seem realistic to you, or is that just hype?
Well, it's definitely pushing the boundaries of what we currently think of as possible with AI. They're leveraging this combination of cutting edge AI models which is ambitious, to say the least. But, we have to remember that AI is only as good as the data that it's trained on. And creating an AI that can truly understand and respond to the nuances of, human needs and desires across such a broad range of applications, well, it's a monumental task. It'll be really interesting to see how they address, the inevitable challenges of accuracy, bias, and, of course, user privacy.
Yeah, for sure. That brings up another really intriguing aspect of Laniakea. They're proposing a system where likes, views, and shares on their platform are actually tokenized on the blockchain. So instead of just, giving someone a thumbs up, users are essentially giving them a tiny piece of digital currency. It sounds revolutionary, but I have to admit, I'm still a bit fuzzy on the details. How would that actually work in practice?
Okay, so think of it this way. Every time you interact with content on Laniakea, you're actually generating a small amount of value for the creator. And that value is represented by a fraction of a Laniakea token, which is tracked and stored on the blockchain. So the more popular the content is, the more tokens the creator accumulates. It's essentially a way to directly reward creators and businesses for the engagement they generate, cutting out the middleman, so to speak.
Okay, so that makes sense on like a basic level. But what about like the financial side of things? I know you mentioned Hubble earlier, which is their financial app, but how does this whole like tokenized system actually translate into like real world money? Can users cash out their tokens, or is it all just like kept within the Laniakea ecosystem?
That's a key question, and one that we'll have to dig into further when we look at their overall business model. They're projecting some pretty substantial revenue growth over the next century, actually, based largely on the success of this tokenized system and their 10% commission on transactions within their apps. But whether those projections are actually realistic, well, that's what we're going to explore in part 2 of this deep dive.
Right. Okay. So this whole Laniakea concept is really shaping up to be quite a puzzle with a lot of moving pieces and some very intriguing possibilities. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back and just remind our listeners of the key points we've covered so far. We're looking at Laniakea, and they want to be more than just another app. Their goal is to be a supercluster, this unified digital ecosystem where users can connect, create, learn, and even earn. And they're aiming to achieve this through a combination of, integrated applications, blockchain-based tokenization, and a powerful AI named LIA. We've explored some of the potential benefits, but there are also some big questions looming out there, particularly when it comes to, the feasibility of their vision and the financial underpinnings of this very ambitious project.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating to me is just the sheer scope of their ambition. They're not just trying to create a better social network. They're attempting to redefine the way we interact with the digital world entirely. I mean, the question is, can they actually make it work? And to answer that, I think we need to look closer at their financial projections, their target markets, and the competitive landscape that they're entering.
All right, so it sounds like we've got a lot more ground to cover in part 2 of our deep dive. We'll be delving into Lanikea's financial projections, exploring their plans for, global domination, and analyzing whether their revenue model can actually support this whole supercluster concept. So don't miss it. Welcome back to our deep dive into Laniakea. Last time we were really starting to get a sense of just how wide-reaching this supercluster idea is. Now we got to look at, how realistic their plans are, especially on the financial side. I mean, they're claiming some pretty huge revenue numbers. Are those even possible?
Well, the financial data they've provided, it paints a very optimistic picture, to say the least. They're projecting exponential growth, aiming for a user base in the hundreds of thousands, all actively generating millions of interactions within their system. So the question is, can they convert that activity into actual profit?
Yeah, I mean, their revenue model seems to hinge on two main things: the tokenized engagement that we talked about earlier, and then a 10% commission on transactions happening across all these different apps that they have. Do we have any details on how those elements actually work?
Yeah, so for the tokenized engagement, the idea seems to be that each interaction, so like a view, a share, it generates a fraction of a Laniakea token for the creator. And those fractions, they add up. And the more popular a creator is, the more tokens they earn. It's meant to be like a direct way to incentivize engagement. But how they plan to handle the exchange of these tokens for real-world currency, that's still a bit unclear.
Right, okay. And the 10% commission on transactions, is that applied to, like, every purchase or service that's booked through their apps? I mean, it seems like that could add up really quickly, but only if they actually manage to attract a significant user base.
That's exactly the catch. Their projections, I mean, they rely heavily on widespread user adoption. and not just, joining the platform, but actually actively using it for a
Wow.
huge range of activities. And they're targeting, North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So they're hoping to capture a global market.
But aren't they going up against some pretty, like, established giants in each of those regions? I mean, we're talking about, like, social media behemoths, entrenched payment platforms, well-known ride-sharing apps. How can Laniakea realistically compete with all of that?
Well, they're betting on their supercluster approach being their key differentiator. So they're not just trying to create,
Yeah.
another ride-sharing app or another social network. They're trying to create this all-encompassing digital ecosystem where users can do everything in one place.
So the convenience factor is a big part of their strategy. Instead of having, a dozen different apps, you just have Laniakea. But, I mean, convenience alone might not be enough, right? Users are already invested in their existing platforms, their social connections, their payment methods. What would make them switch to something completely new?
Yeah, it's a valid point. Laniakea will need to offer more than just convenience. They'll need to convince users that their platform is not only, easier to use, but also more rewarding, more secure, and ultimately more valuable to their digital lives.
And they can't afford to overlook the technical aspects either, right? Can their systems handle the load of a global user base making millions of transactions? What about security, data privacy, and regulatory compliance across multiple countries? I mean, those are huge hurdles to overcome.
Absolutely. Building a platform that can function, seamlessly on a global scale is a monumental task. They'll need, robust infrastructure, airtight security measures, and a deep understanding of international regulations.
Yeah, one of the documents actually mentions that they're committed to know your customer protocols. But that's just, one small piece of the puzzle. I mean, there are so many potential challenges there, like managing all these different currencies, complying with data privacy laws in various regions, and then just ensuring that their blockchain-based systems are secure and reliable.
It seems like they're aware of these challenges, but acknowledging them is one thing. Actually addressing them is another. We need to look beyond, the optimistic projections and consider whether their technology, their team, and their overall strategy are actually equipped to handle the complexities of operating a global digital ecosystem.
Yeah, it's clear that Laniakea is taking on a massive challenge here. I mean, the scope of their vision, the complexity of their technology, and the competitive landscape that they're entering. All of that presents, significant obstacles.
And what's interesting to me is that their success, it isn't just dependent on, technical prowess or a solid business model. It also hinges on their ability to understand and adapt to user behavior, to anticipate and address, evolving needs, and to build trust in a digital landscape where skepticism and caution are really paramount.
So it seems like they're trying to achieve this delicate balance, appealing to users with convenience and a sense of community, while also like guaranteeing security, privacy, and a system that they can trust.
And they're trying to do all of this while integrating AI into practically every aspect of their platform. Remember LIA, their AI assistant. It's supposed to be the glue that holds everything together, the intelligent force that personalizes the experience and makes it all work seamlessly.
Right. We can't forget about the AI factor. I mean, it's central to their vision. But it also introduces, this whole new layer of complexity and potential risk. We've touched on some of the potential benefits of LIA, but now we need to delve into the potential downsides, the ethical considerations, and the impact that such a powerful AI could have on user behavior and data privacy.
And that brings us to the next crucial question. Can they harness the power of AI responsibly? Join us in part 3, where we'll take a deeper dive into LIA, exploring its capabilities, its limitations, and the potential implications of placing so much power in the hands of an artificial intelligence.
Okay, so we are back for the final part of our Laniakea deep dive, and we've covered a lot of ground so far, from their ambitious supercluster vision to, all the details of their business model. But now it's time to really focus on, the heart of their technology, LIA. Their AI assistant. And they're claiming it can handle practically everything, from booking rides to finding tutors to personalizing content. It's a pretty bold claim.
It's certainly ambitious. They're describing LIA as this truly intelligent assistant that can anticipate user needs and seamlessly manage tasks across a wide range of applications. It's almost like having a personal concierge for your entire digital life, all accessible through voice commands.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of being able to just say, like, hey, LA, find me a vegan restaurant near my current location that accepts Laniakea tokens it is pretty appealing. But I have to admit, the more we discuss like LIA's potential capabilities, the more I start to wonder about like the potential drawbacks. What happens if LIA makes a mistake? Like, let's say it misinterprets a request or like provides inaccurate information. Who's responsible for those errors?
That's a really crucial question, and one that the source material doesn't really address. They focus heavily on the convenience and efficiency of LIA, but there's very little discussion of accountability or potential errors.
Hmm.
And if LIA is handling, financial transactions, booking travel arrangements, or even providing like educational recommendations, the consequences of a mistake can be pretty significant.
Yeah. Right. And then there's the whole issue of data privacy.
Mhm.
For LIA to function as they describe it, needs access to a massive amount of personal data. It needs to know your location, your preferences, your spending habits, your social interactions. I mean, that's a lot of information to entrust to an AI, even if they claim it's, super secure.
Yeah, security is definitely a major concern. But even if we assume that they have, top-notch security measures in place, there's still the question of how that data is being used. Could LIA be used to like manipulate user behavior? Could it subtly steer users towards certain products or services that benefit Laniakea's ecosystem, even if those aren't the best options for the user?
It makes you wonder about transparency and control. Do users have a clear understanding of how LIA is making decisions? Can they opt out of certain data collection practices or limit LIA's access to their information? I mean, these are important questions that the documents don't really explore.
No, they don't. They touch on the use of, advanced AI models like Bard, Google AI, DaVinci, and Amazon Q to power LIA, but there's no real explanation of how those models are being implemented or how they're addressing potential biases within those models. They're presenting a very like idealized vision of AI, but the reality of AI development is often much messier.
Yeah, so it seems like Laniakea is walking a fine line here. On the one hand, they're promising this revolutionary digital experience powered by a super intelligent AI that can, simplify our lives and connect us in new ways. But on the other hand, there are legitimate concerns about the potential downsides of giving an AI so much control over our digital lives.
It's a classic dilemma in the world of technology.
Yeah.
We're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible, but we need to be mindful of the potential consequences. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of new innovations, but we can't afford to overlook the ethical considerations and the potential risks.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to end on. So we've explored the intricacies of Laniakea's supercluster concept, their ambitious business model, and the potential benefits and drawbacks of their AI assistant, LIA. It's clear that Laniakea is attempting to create something truly groundbreaking, but whether they can actually deliver on their promises, well, that remains to be seen. There are significant technical, financial, and ethical challenges that they need to overcome.
Yeah, ultimately, the success or failure of Laniakea is going to depend on a multitude of factors.
Yeah.
Can they build a platform that is both technically robust and user-friendly? Can they create a sustainable business model that rewards creators and businesses without exploiting users? And perhaps most importantly, can they develop and deploy AI in a responsible and ethical way? I think those are the questions that we'll all be watching closely as Laniakea continues to evolve.
Absolutely. So that's where we'll leave you for this deep dive into Laniakea. We hope this has given you a better understanding of their vision, their technology, and the potential implications of their platform. But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring, researching, and forming your own opinions about the future of social networks and the role of AI in our digital lives. Until next time.